Alright, let's be clear about one thing first. This video will not be a beginner guide. Quite the opposite, actually. This is a video about Elsword endgame really is. Something we usually call fine-tuning. So if you are someone who enjoys theory crafting, math, numbers, percentages, formulas, yeah, this video is for you. At the moment where you already have all the access to all content in the game, you already have strong equipment and accessories, what is left for you to do is making small adjustments to increase your efficiency and deal even more damage. Because the truth is, there is always something that you can tweak to make your character stronger. But before I even start with my own case, I need to warn you. If you are someone who absolutely hates math, this video is not for you. I will be dealing with a lot of numbers here, formulas, and applying this knowledge to show you the efficiency percentages of my current setup versus the changes that I'm planning to make with my own character. You really need to enjoy math to not get frustrated here, because logic it is extremely important if you want to apply fine-tuning in theory and actually see the results in practice, alright? With that being said, now let me show you my current situation in the game. I'm currently using the Access skill equipment refined to plus 11 refinement. My gloves are currently at Reforged 20, but for the sake of this video, I'm going to assume that I already upgraded to Reforged 21. That way, we will be working with the fully built up Access skill set, and this will be our calculations base for all the changes that I will talk about next. Right now, I won't mess with micro adjustments, because in my current situation, there are changes that are much more impactful than tweaking tiny attributes. And among those changes, we have the following. Completely removing adaptability from my air resonance page, obtaining Dogma accessories and their stats and effects, changing the fixed effect on artifacts rings from plus 4% polarized to plus 4% attack power, changing the artifact color from yellow to orange, obtaining the unique Atmaran accessory set effects. Yes, I'm currently using the rare effect because I can't actually drop that, so anyway. I should also obtain the Dogma title and its power increase. I will also readjust socket stats by removing boss damage to increase bravery skill damage. And yes, I will do this by using the Atmaran stones. I will also switch the Iceburner set from Ascending Dragon to Grand Flora with the weapon and accessories. But before anything else, I need to explain something called attribute effectiveness. What is that? Well, basically, it is the real increase in your DPS when you apply an additive percentages on top of another percentages. It sounds weird at first, yeah, I can see that, but it is really not. Any stat that works with percentages will suffer from effectiveness depending how much of that stat you already have. Let me give you a simple example. Let's just say that you currently have 200% boss damage and you go into a raid and you deal 4 trillion damage to the boss. If you increase your boss damage by 10%, you're not actually gaining 10% real damage the next time you do that raid. You're actually gaining 5%. Why? Because you already had 200% boss damage and now you're going to 210%. So the calculation looks exactly like this. With that being said, here's a golden rule for you. Any type of percentage-based stat, it is better to keep at lower level, so that any increase that you might apply later will give you higher effectiveness and therefore a higher increase in real DPS at the end of the run. The only stat that doesn't suffer from this type of effectiveness, it is the physical and magical attack power, because it is not a percentage applied on the top of another percentage. It is a percentage applied on the top of a fixed base number. So if you gain, for an example, plus 4% attack power, you are directly increasing your attack power by 4% without any effectiveness loss. So increasing your base power becomes extremely important, because once the base is higher, all other formulas that multiply damage will be multiplying a bigger number. That's why, when you reach endgame, you basically start doing exactly like this. will adjust your percentage-based stats to squeeze out more real DPS in the end. I will be very honest with you, I am already in endgame, and I'm at that stage where I'm doing fine-tuning to improve my performance even further. Even if you can already clear all content, when you press tab at the end of the dungeon and compare your damage to other players in your party, being below average as a DPS, it is very embarrassing. And yes, people will notice that. For DPS characters, dealing less damage means that you are being less efficient than someone else in the same role. But oh, Airon, that's nonsense. Sure, until you actually play DPS and realize that support players expect strong DPS to finish content faster, especially in those long raids that can last 2 or 3 hours, like Dogma used to. Back then, that raid was not a place for mediocrity. Now, the first change that I want to make to improve my efficiency is by removing all the points that I have invested in adaptability from my L resonance page. That's roughly 7% adaptability, which I will reallocate to HP and boss damage reduction. With 50 points invested in HP and boss damage reduction, this will give me plus 20% boss damage reduction and plus 25% EHP increase. This percentage will be applied in the base HP, but still, it is a HP increase nonetheless. Why would you do this, Airon? Well, one of the first signs that you have reached true endgame is by completely removing adaptability from your L resonance. If you are using a fully built up plus 11 extra skill set with Reforged 21, you will notice that the equipment itself already gives you plus 20% adaptability just by wearing all 4 pieces. Because of that, reaching 55% adaptability has become much easier, since many pieces of gear now provides adaptability as parts of their effects. Knowing that you no longer will be needing adaptability on L resonance page frees up 100 L resonance points that you can invest into other stats where your character is currently lacking. You could invest into EMP cost reduction or cooldown reduction, for example. But since I already have both cooldown reduction and EMP reduction sitting around 35%, I don't really need more of that. So for me, those points are going to HP and boss damage reduction. But Airon, that only increases your defense, not your attack. Correct, but who said that you are not improving your character by doing this? Survivability matters a lot, especially in raids where bosses actually hit very hard. You don't want to be dying all the time and lying on the floor like a piece of trash. Increasing my HP through resonance improves my survivability, and boss damage reduction does the same. But wait, I'm already close to 45% boss damage reduction, so those extra 20% are pretty much useless. Yes, for now, but the video doesn't end here. This will only make sense later. Now, unfortunately, because I am incredibly unlucky as a human being, I haven't managed to drop all the Dogma accessories yet. The only one I currently have is the lower buy from accessory. That accessory will give me plus 5% all skill damage compared to the Abyss accessory, plus the 2-piece set effect, which gives me plus 7% boss damage and plus 5% critical chance. This is good, but the real value comes from having the full Dogma accessory set, so I still need to replace Abyss Incense and Phantom Crest. By swapping Abyss accessory from Dogma, I will be gaining and losing the following stats: minus 10% awakening gain, minus 5% boss damage, plus 5% critical damage, plus 5% polarization, plus 5% continuous damage, and plus 3% all skill damage. These are extremely powerful stats, and they will definitely make a bigger difference in my power. But I won't apply micro adjustments yet, otherwise this video will become even longer than it is. So let's store those values because we will add them together with other changes later. Relax, this will make sense if you watch the whole video. Now, I have been seriously thinking about changing my artifact color from yellow to orange. Most people will recommend yellow artifact effects, and I agree. Yellow, it is very strong. There is absolutely nothing wrong with keeping yellow artifact. However, in my current situation, the orange artifact will give me more power compared to yellow. So let's look at what orange will give to me. Plus 5% HP when entering a dungeon. This is very good because it is multiplicative increase to your total HP, not your base HP like the most other HP bonuses. Plus 2% adaptability, plus 10% boss damage, and plus 10% boss damage reduction. Now, when you compare that to yellow artifact effects, yellow will give you minus 10% skill cooldown when you awaken, plus 8% critical chance and maximize when you awaken, plus 25% awakening gain speed, plus 4% physical and magical attack power when you awaken, and minus 10% EMP cost when you awaken. So yes, yellow artifact will give you more power during awakening, plus it is a lot of quality of life without cooldown reduction and EMP cost reduction, combined with the plus 4% attack power. That's really strong and pairs extremely well with the Grove Atmaran accessories. But here's one thing, I'm not using Grove accessories. I'm using Flow Set, which at unique rarity will give me plus 20% attack power compared to Grove's plus 30% critical damage. So why does Orange Artifacts synergize better with Flow? Orange Artifacts will give me two important power related stats, plus 2% adaptability and plus 10% boss damage. Remember when I said that I was removing adaptability from my L resonance page? Yeah, those 2% adaptability from the orange artifact will effectively replace part of what I have removed, giving me real power back. On top of that, the plus 10% boss damage and plus 10% boss damage reduction will be extremely important for the future build. I will also change the ring effect by adding 2% adaptability and plus 10% critical damage, replacing my current plus 20% critical damage from artifact rings. I will also swap plus 4% polarize for plus 4% attack power, which directly multiply my base damage. So considering all artifact related changes, here's what I will gain and lose. I will lose 4% physical and magical attack power. I will also lose 10% critical damage, minus 8% critical damage and maximize, minus 4% polarize, but I will gain plus 4% adaptability, plus 10% boss damage, and plus 4% attack power. Airon, you're just throwing percentages at us. Yes, and there's a reason for that. I don't want to show you final damage difference yet, because that would confuse people right now. There are too many numbers. The idea here it is to stack all the differences and only show you the final DPS comparison at the end of the video, so you can clearly see the difference between my current DPS and what I will gain after applying all changes. I know that I will gain power by applying these changes individually, but for an exponential gain, we need to consider everything together. Now, another change that should be easier, hopefully, it is by upgrading my Atmaran accessories to unique rarity. Right now, I'm using the rare effect, and upgrading to unique will increase my attack power from plus 13% to 20%, which is a plus 7% effective gain. I won't consider cooldown reduction from the set for power calculations, but keeping in mind that lower cooldowns means better rotations, which indirectly increases damage. I also already have the Flow Mandala at unique rarity, which can be later upgraded to legendary, which will give me plus 1% continuous damage and 1% adaptability. So in my best case scenario, ignoring the fixed effects, that's pretty much RNG, upgrading my Atmaran accessories will give to me plus 1% continuous damage, plus 1% adaptability, and plus 7% attack power. Planning fixed effects, it is kinda complicated because they can either be amazing or terrible, so I will ignore them by now. Now, things will get more interesting. because the Dogma title from Druaporia will be extremely important in the power boost. This title is extremely powerful and will directly replace my natural flow from Abyss Raid. By replacing the natural flow, I will gain plus 7% skill damage and plus 5% hyper adaptability. This is very situational, but I will consider it. Hyper adaptability is very insane because it breaks the 55% adaptability cap. In endgame, demon dungeons apply 95% debuff, so the calculations works like this. 95% minus 55%, it is a 40% penalty on your stats. With the hyper adaptability in this case, the calculations become something like this. 95% minus 60%, which equals 35% penalty. So what's the real DPS difference here? Well, you should divide 65% to 60%, which equals plus 8.33% DPS gain. So Dogma will give me plus 7% skill damage, plus 8.33% DPS from hyper adaptability stat. And that's huge. Seriously, you should go and get your Dogma title. But now let's talk about the Atmaran stones. They are not useless at all, despite of what some people say. They exist exactly for this purpose, making micro adjustments when you need to relocate stats. Devi, it is a bravery focused character, so increasing bravery skill damage will directly increase her power. My current bravery damage, it is 117%. My plan, it is to add plus 25% bravery skill damage by removing 25% boss damage from sockets. Yes, Airon, that sounds insane. Raids are endgame content if you don't know about that. And yeah, correct, boss damage, it is important. But you should also remember what I explained about attribute effectiveness in the beginning of this video. I currently have 162 boss damage increase. By swapping socket stones, I will effectively trade minus 20% boss damage, minus 20% boss damage reduction, and I will increase plus 25% bravery skill damage. The boss damage reduction I will recover from the L resonance page by increasing with plus 20% from the L resonance page and plus 10% from the orange artifact. So this makes me plus 30% boss damage reduction. This means that I will only need 6 socket stones to reach the 45% cap again. This lets me keep my defense while shifting offense power into bravery skills. At this point, you're probably thinking, damn, this guy is holding me hostage in this video and I still haven't seen the DPS difference. Relax, there's one more change before we sum everything up. The final change, it is by swapping my Ice Burner effect from Ascending Dragon to Grand Flora. Right now, I use Ascended Dragon weapon, upper face and middle face, which gives me 3-piece effect. So with all their effects, Ascending Dragon set currently gives me plus 5% damage to enemies below 100% HP, plus 4% movement speed, plus 2% all skill damage, minus 5% EMP cost, plus 3% continuous damage, and 7% polarize. I plan to swap weapons and accessories to Grand Flora. After accounting for fixed effects and subtracting the Ariel's Guardian values, the net gain from fixed effects, it is going to be minus 4% maximize, minus 3% critical chance, minus 1% action speed, plus 2% continuous damage, plus 5% cooldown reduction, and plus 4% polarize. Now, let's look at the Grand Flora set effects, which will give to me plus 5% damage to enemies above 50% HP, plus 5% damage to enemies below 50% HP, plus 5% all skill damage, and plus 6% continuous damage. So, by swapping Ascending Dragon set effect, I will end up with minus 5% cooldown reduction, minus 7% polarize, plus 3% continuous damage, plus 5% all skill damage, plus 5% damage dealt. So the total net change from the Ice Burner swap is minus 5% maximize, minus 3% critical chance, minus 1% action speed, minus 3% polarize, plus 5% continuous damage, plus 5% all skill damage, and plus 5% damage dealt. Now, if you stayed with me until this point, congratulations. I know how people are these days, zero patience, watching shorts and calling it podcasts. But all of this just reminds me that reaching endgame doesn't mean there's nothing left to improve. After calculating everything together, my total real DPS increase it is plus 46.1% real DPS increase. Yes, almost plus half of my current damage, and this is a lot. And to prove I'm not pulling numbers out of my ass, here is the breakdown. By trading the Dogma power accessories, I will gain plus 7.6% DPS increase. The bravery stat swap from the boss damage to bravery skills will give me plus 2% DPS increase. The swap between the yellow artifact with the orange artifact will give me plus 2.7% DPS increase. The Atmaran flow upgrade will give me roughly plus 8% DPS increase. The Dogma title, this is absurd, but plus 15.3% DPS increase. And the Grandi Flora Ice Burner swap will give me plus 10.5% DPS increase. Altogether, 46.1% real DPS increase. Of course, this will take time, effort, and grinding. But that's the beauty of the MMORPGs. Being able to press tab at the end of the run and see that you are actually strong enough to carry others. This will surely give you credibility and trust in the endgame groups. Some people might call this tryharding. I call this an adventure. One that lets me see the true progression, and that's fun for me. So that's it, guys. Thanks for everyone who stayed until the end. Let me know in the comments if you enjoy long videos like this or you prefer short update guides. Elsword content scene, it is pretty cold, so doing something different like this might help you bring more interest into the game. I don't know. But, thanks again for watching, and I will see you in game.